Welcome to the Wayne Bennett Podcast, celebrating West Virginia's people, places, and the culture of Southern Appalachia. Now here's your host, Wayne Bennett.
Welcome to the Easy Come, Easy Go broadcast. This is Wayne Bennett, and it's May the 15th, and this is actually our 15th episode. I was kind of wrong last week when I said it was the 13th. My wife corrected me. And also, I'd like to give a shout out to the city of Beckley. They're honoring Bill Withers today on the 15th, and they're putting a marker, dedicating a marker up in front of Stratton Elementary, and having some music downtown, and in honor of a great musician, great man, and they're going to erect a statue in the near future of Bill Withers, an old hometown boy we're all proud of. And today we have a special guest, a lady who has dedicated her life to the health of other people, one of the smartest people that I know, Miss Donna Reed. Welcome, Donna.
Well, thank you for that great intro, but I don't know how smart I am. I'm here.
Well, we're glad to have you. And, you're too young to remember this, but there used to be a Donna Reed show. I think it started back in 1958 and ran in the early part of the 60s. And I loved that show and used to watch it all the time. And kind of funny, she was a health professional too. She was a nurse, and her husband was a doctor on the show, and it was very entertaining. But you live in Delaware now, West Virginia, and moved to Delaware. And ironically, last week I had Dale Smith on, and he moved from Delaware to West Virginia, and that's where he grew up here. Tell us a little bit about growing up in Beckley. Where did you go to school?
Well, started out at Sylvia Elementary, and 1 through 6. And I remember every one of those school teachers, their names and everything. You don't forget those first years. They're very, I don't know how to say this. They form the basis of your personality and your education. And some of them were great teachers, and some of them I don't think so fondly of anymore. But then I went on to Stratton when it was just a junior high, and that's where I started playing music, taking after my older sister, because she put a love of trumpet in my heart.
Who was the band director at Stratton?
Oh gosh. That's the one teacher I can't seem to remember his name at all. McKinney, I think it was. Okay.
And were there, so you started playing what instrument? Trumpet. And were there any teachers in the junior high that might have had an impact on you besides the music?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Miss Dixon. Miss Dixon, she put a love of literature. I already loved books, but books are one thing, but literature is something totally different. I was just reading garbage before I met her, so she put the greats in my heart.
You have any particular authors that you...
Agatha Christie was a big one at that time, and before that it was, I won't say that Nancy Drew's garbage, because I really did enjoy the Nancy Drew and the Bobbsey Twins and the Hardy Boys before that. But then I started reading a lot of Agatha Christie after that, and really enjoyed the mysteries. And there was one book that I read growing up that would scare the absolute bejesus out of me, and that was Don't Look Behind You. But that wasn't an Agatha Christie book. That was the big guy with the pointy nose. He had the series
Hitchcock.
Hitchcock.
No, I used to love his show, and he was quite a director and producer also. Of course, you came from a musical family. That there were some others in your family that played instruments.
All of us played an instrument. My dad was a musician, and he played guitar and, of course, performed in public. And he brought home the first trumpet that my sister Diana played in band. And when she was done with it, I played that same instrument.
Wonder where that instrument's at now.
I think you all have it here.
Okay. And of course, your brother played.
Danny, he played guitar. Dreama, she played flute, and Dorena played saxophone.
Anybody play any other instruments besides?
I think Dorena played some piano. I'm not sure. Danny, when he was little, took violin lessons. That didn't last too long.
Besides music, did you have any other interest, clubs or hobbies or anything that took a lot of time? Reading, and of course, reading and music would surely take a lot of time.
Later in life, a lot of computer games. Growing up, I liked to crochet and knit, and I wasn't very good at that. But they came out with this thing called a knit magic machine, and it was this little plastic square box that had a little hole in the center that had these little hooks that went up and down as you turned a crank, and you threaded the thread through it, the yarn, and when you cranked, the needles went up and down, and it would either make a panel, depending on where the setting was, or a complete tube, so you could like knit socks, or I used it to make Barbie clothes because I loved making Barbie clothes out of these things. And I had two little sisters who also had Barbie dolls, so I made their Barbie doll clothes with this. And sewing, I like to sew, and ride bicycles. We everywhere on the bicycles. The whole neighborhood kids would just ride for hours. You just never see us once we left the house.
Yeah, it was a pretty big neighborhood at that time. Growing up around Clough Street, Hartley, and Johnstown Road, and never ran out of anything to do. And you mentioned playing music. What kind of music did you like back then?
Well, when you're in band, you pretty much play the marching songs that are out there. John Philip Sousa. And then when you move into the higher grades of music, then you have different styles of music that they allow you to get into, and I really enjoyed the jazz band.
Oh yeah.
So I stayed with that for 3 years.
What kind of music did you like to listen to?
Jazz. I like a lot
Still
of
like jazz?
And I'm stuck in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. I can't get past that, seems like.
Yeah, that's kind of weird for me. In high school, I really liked the Motown sound. And I mean, just anything that came out, and then as I got older, I still like the Motown sound, from back then. But I kind of started leaning toward classic country, and I like some of the new country music, but not all of it. And but I guess your taste changes. I never was a real hard rock fan. And didn't really like rap too much, but it's the new generation. They've got their own taste and stuff. But now, when you were in high school, who was the band director there?
Alan Staten.
Alan Staten, and he hung around quite a bit and did a lot. Even after he retired, he had the community band. And were you around when? Did you play?
Yes.
Did you? And I know they had some of the Christmas concerts and springtime concerts, things like that. And he was one of the strongholds of Woodrow Wilson High School for sure. Also in high school, you met your future husband.
Yes.
How did that happen?
I went and I was staying the weekend with a girlfriend, and her boyfriend was out of town, and he was tasked by his best friend, who was dating my best friend, who was with the good lady I was staying with, to check on her because he was going to be out of town, and her parents were out of town. So when he came over to check on her, that's when I met him.
And what grade were you in then?
11th grade.
11th grade. And his name's Greg.
Yes.
And he played golf, didn't
Yes,
he?
he was a golf.
On the golf team
Yeah, he
and
was on the
everything.
golf
And what was your greatest memory in high school, would you think, if you had to, or one of your greatest, if you had to pick something out?
Oh gosh, it's band related. We were at a ratings festival, and Mr. Staten had put together this amazing halftime show that we were putting on, and we were lined up all along two full parts of the edge of the football field, and we were coming together out of a point and marching straight diagonally across the field, and the crowd went wild.
Wow.
Chill bumps.
And that was, when did you graduate?
1980.
1980. And that's when the bands were quite a bit bigger
Huge.
than they are now. And it seems like Woodrow Wilson's getting it built back up again, but it has been slim for a period, and I'm not sure it'll ever be as big as it was back in the day. But they are attempting that. After high school, what'd you do? What'd you get into?
Well, I went to college and studied electronics and graduated with that, and then unfortunately they still had the mentality that women shouldn't be doing that, so I had a difficult time, in fact it's an impossible time finding a job in that, so I kind of got stuck working in a convenience store for several years, and then my sister started working in a clinic, and she was telling me about this wonderful new modality called ultrasound, which I had never even heard of before. And so we got involved in that.
Let's go back to the convenience store. Then, weren't you robbed one time?
I was robbed many times. But the most memorable one was I was robbed by gypsies when the gypsies came through town. And that's a terrible term. I'm sorry for anyone that I might disrespect by using that term, but that's what they called them back then. But they were on a we were like in a route that they took up from the south, and they came in mass and got me all flustered, and there was too much. This was a very busy store, and somehow they got into the safe, and I didn't see it happen.
Really?
And so when I went to go get change, it was gone.
Wow.
Yeah, the money was gone. So I thought somebody was playing a joke on me. I was in total shock. I went out the front door screaming, "All right, it's not funny, put it back."
Were you ever threatened with a gun or a weapon?
No, I didn't get threatened by a gun. I did get into an altercation with someone who was stealing from the store and got punched, but never a gun.
Take one for the company, huh?
Yeah, it was awful. But
well, tell us about the ultrasound. When I was getting some treatment, I went to my cardiologist, and he had a lady that did ultrasound on my heart and arteries or whatever. But then when they were checking some issues that I had, they had to do an ultrasound from my neck up, I guess carotid artery and all that. Well, they had to get another person that did the ultrasound because the first one wasn't qualified to do that particular. So I guess are they certified in certain types of ultrasound, or how does that work? Now, when you got into the I guess they call it a sonographer, is that what that's the title? When you got into that, you started contracting, going to different areas. How does that work?
well, I worked for 10 years before I decided to go off and do that for area hospitals. And I started going to Charleston. We were doing a mobile service up there, and we did a pseudo travel or contracting job for a little hospital up in near Hurricane. And that kind of gave me a taste for it. But when you go, you get a company that contracts to hospitals, and they send employees in for when the hospital has a need for either an extra employee because someone is gone off on maternity leave or someone has quit and they need to fill a slot fast, and you have to be able to hit the ground running. So they look for experienced sonographers. So my first one was in Hawaii. So
Wow.
I went for a 3-month contract. That was my typical thing. I would look for 3-month contracts. But I ended up spending almost an entire year there.
Wow.
Yeah.
And tell me about Hawaii. What was it like? I know you worked a lot, but
Yeah, I did. But, if you have to be in hell, paradise is the place to be.
there you go. There you go. What advice would you give someone who was just visiting Hawaii? What do they need to?
Oh, gosh.
How do they need to prepare, or what do they need to look for, or what should they see, or?
Well, it's very expensive there. I will tell you that. Things that I can suggest is look for what the locals do, because the locals know how to find things that are free to do. So kind of get a newspaper, see what's happening in the local community. They have these fun little sunshine markets that sell produce and stuff. So it's a lot cheaper than going to a grocery store if you're going to, like cook in your room or whatever.
Uh-huh.
So the little sunshine markets are their place to buy the produce. And they crop up here and there, but they usually list them in the newspapers as to where it's going to be. Don't try to buy meat there because it's really expensive, but fish is very plentiful. So if you like fish, you can find some great fish there. Be sure and get some fresh pineapple because there's nothing in the world like a pineapple straight off the pineapple farm. It's not like getting it in the grocery stores here. You think you're getting a fresh pineapple. That's not a fresh pineapple. That's been on the boat for a while.
Well, you were there almost a year. Where did you go then after you left Hawaii?
Oh, Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh.
Spent almost a year there. Now.
And when you went to Pittsburgh, was that a year contract?
No, it was a 3-month contract. But if they like you, they extend you. So they called me their permanent temporary.
Yeah. Well, where do you stay when you just, do they provide?
They provide housing, yes.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
Everything's provided for.
And you were in Florida too for a while, weren't you?
Oh gosh, yeah. I worked from West Palm all the way up to Stewart. Different contracts, different times. I worked from New Hampshire to Florida, different years along the way. Most of my contracts were, 3-month contracts, but I did have a few that were much longer term than that. So.
But now you end up in Delaware. How did that work out?
Well, I did not want to go to Delaware. I fought it tooth and nail. I had heard bad things about the department that I was going to go work in from fellow traveler. That it wasn't a place that you wanted to be because those people were just too mean to their travelers. So then I ran into some lady who had been there again as a traveler, and she said it wasn't as bad as what this other traveler had told me, and that I should at least try it. And this was my second go around in Pittsburgh. I had been there for a year as that time too, so it was time to move on. So I decided to bite the bullet, and my recruiter was adamant I was going there anyway, so I was afraid she wasn't going to give me any other contracts if I didn't take that one. So I ended up going to Delaware, specifically where the Dover Air Force Base is, in that area. There's a hospital there, Bay Health Medical Center.
And you must have liked it, so you decided you're not doing the contracting thing anymore. You decided to stay home. And
I fell in love with this little community, and it was 2008. The economy was kind of tanking too, so it was a good time to come off the road. And a lot of my fellow traveling sonographers couldn't find contracts, so they were all jumping off the bandwagon and sliding into whatever job they could find at the time. Some of them never did find jobs, but the problem was if you weren't registered, and a lot of them weren't at that time, they couldn't find jobs. The hospitals just weren't hiring. There was too much of a glut to hire a non-registered sonographer when you had your pick of registered sonographers.
What's the worst thing about being a sonographer?
The worst thing, musculoskeletal injuries. We have one of the highest musculoskeletal injury rate of any profession.
Really?
You wouldn't think that, but we have this where our arms are out to the side, unsupported for long periods of time, and it causes a lot of wear and tear on the rotator cuffs, the elbows, and the wrists.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Yeah.
What's the best thing?
Best thing? Oh, gosh. Meeting the people I get to meet, I guess, the clientele is usually, very sick, but you get to put a little sunshine in their day, so to speak. You treat them like you would your family, and they usually open up and they'll tell you some stories, and I love stories. So
we've been going through a pretty horrific time here in the past year with the pandemic, and what was it like at the hospital you were at?
It was awful. Everybody's scared to death to, go and work on patients that have COVID because, we really didn't know what we were up against. And a lot of healthcare workers got very sick and a lot died. We were, short on supplies to help keep us safe. So, they had to change the way that they were doing, giving out the personal protection devices, and we had to use them in ways that was never planned for before. We had to use them longer because they were one use only before that, and then we started using them for much longer after that. And it's just now getting to where now they're loosening the reins on those a bit, so we don't have to use them quite as long anymore.
If you felt like you had a legacy, what would your legacy be? What would people think of you? How would they think of you when you're gone?
I think that they would probably think of me as an adventurer, because my sister calls me the vagabond. It's called me that for a very long time. My mom calls me the butterfly because I flit from place to place.
Well, what's on your bucket list? You have traveled a lot. You've done a lot of different things. What would you include? What would you think that something you haven't done, or a few things you haven't done?
Well, we want to discover the western part of the United States. We haven't done anything out that direction. We have a plan to retire and travel, so that'll be in the next few years. So there's a lot of places out there we want to see. Grand Canyon is big on my bucket list. I want to see the Grand Canyon.
Are you talking about getting a camper?
No, we're going to do it in timeshares.
I see.
Yeah.
And your husband is a retired police officer, right?
Correct.
And would you ever consider moving back to West Virginia? Or
probably not. We have too much to do to actually ever buy another home, I think, at this point, because we want to travel. So we're going to sell our house and just travel.
Now, you have timeshares now, don't you?
Yes.
Where are they located?
Everywhere. They're the point system, so you can use them anywhere. Yes, anywhere that uses your points, and they have RCIs, exchange, so we can use those towards RCI, and so that you can use other, like the Hyatts and things like that. Wyndham.
Do you play music now? I mean,
Rarely. I still have my horn. or times when I'm like, I should go downstairs and play my instrument, but then something always crops up, so I just don't have the time or the energy. We spend a lot of time away from home right now, so the only time I have that's at home is during the days that I work, and I work very long hours. So,
because when you played music, you were, I mean, in high school, you were like the one that played the national anthem and that stuff. If they needed
yes,
an individual trumpet, and
in the 12th grade, yes.
yeah. Well, you're not going to believe this, but our time is up.
Oh, gosh,
And
I went that quick.
But you got to promise me you'll come back, and we've got some other things, other questions we want to talk about. Would you do that?
Sure.
I'd love to have you back.
I was nervous, but this was easy.
Yeah, it was easier than what you expect. But people out there would like to thank you, and we'd remind you, if you want to get a hold of me, it's awbennett50@gmail.com. Love to hear from you. Everybody's got a story. We'd like to, if you're interested in being a part of our program, we'd love to have you. And remember, if you're not dead yet, you're not done yet. Until next week, God bless you.